Well, I'll tell you what I did, and I don't think I would do anything differently. I came out of school in '73. In no particular order, first, I went to work for industry. That proved to be brilliant for me because I learned to talk. I already knew how to talk to fellow behavioral scientists because that's what I was trained all through graduate school. But suddenly I learned to talk to managers in words that they would understand. And I learned how to talk with vocabulary that had nothing to do with research. So instead of saying, I've got a great idea for research, which would have been committing suicide, I would say, I've got a great idea that'll help you. Now fill in the blank, whatever the problem is. Let me run it by you. Nobody ever said no. And then I would say, do you think we should document this? Nobody ever even paused. They would look at me like I was an idiot and say, of course we have to document this. Then I would say, I got an idea on how we can document this. Then I would say, you know, the danger is favoritism. If we do this with some employees and not all employees, and they would go, well, we can't do it with all employees. I go, my point exactly. So let's randomly select, which was my way of random assignment. So it turned out to be brilliant. I came out in '73. In 1975, I had 5 or so articles in Journal of Applied Psychology and in Personnel Psychology, because editors and reviewers had never heard of mountain beaver trappers and pulpwood producers. And I was doing rigorous science, not with college freshmen from a Psych 100 gang, but in real life. So I vehemently argue with colleagues who say we got to get our kids into prestigious universities. I don't say you shouldn't, but I'm saying you should be looking at big name companies, whether it's IBM, Apple, Google, Facebook, Canadian Tire here in Canada, because if they can go in and do meaningful research, watch their names go right to the top. Like Alex Alonso is the head researcher at SHRM. He's got it made. He's got it made. So that's one. Number two, I systematically networked. So I made a point of meeting Dr. So-and-so at SIOP or any of these other conferences that I've mentioned. And having published by 1975, they knew this little kid named Gary Latham. He's probably only late 20s, 28, 29, 30. I met Ed Locke for the first time at the American Psychological Association. It was 1974. I'd never met him. I read the psychological abstracts, but I never met him before. And we became fast friends. We're still publishing research together. I've outlasted one of his wives, and he's outlasted one of mine, is what I like to tell people. We fight and argue like an old married couple, but we still do publishable research like we did back in the '70s. So I networked. I think a third thing, and again, why do you want to network? So that when you've got an issue or you want to collaborate, there are key people in our field who are much smarter than I and have far more experience than I, who I can call on for assistance. So here's the other one. I've talked about the Summit Group. I've got these 20 people, well, I'm one of the 20, so 19, that I can go for walks with. So one time, it's 1977. I told you I joined in, I believe, 75 or 76. It's by invitation only. And we're meeting in Fort Lauderdale. I go for a walk on the beach, bare feet, with John Campbell from the University of Minnesota. And I've got a repertoire of questions just like you. And I'm going, John, what about? John, what about? John, what about? And he's giving me these amazing answers. Well, I couldn't have got that if I had just stayed in my office at Weyerhaeuser. And eventually, Terry Mitchell invited me to come to University of Washington. But there, I'm limited to the number of faculty at the University of Washington. If I'm going to SIOP and I'm networking and I'm in the summit group and I'm literally and metaphorically rubbing shoulders with people like Porter and Lawler and John Campbell, well, it's hard for me to screw up, hard for me to be stupid when I've got all these brilliant people mentoring me. And that's what they were doing. They were mentoring. And now I'm in my 70s and they still are, only it's the younger people who are mentoring me, not the older. It's kind of curvilinear. You start off young, you need help. Now you get so old, you still need help, but it's you go to the junior folks to say, what about? And I listen.